listeners. Welcome to The Path to Calm. Stop overthinking, become present, find peace on this beautiful June 2nd, 2025. As we navigate our journey towards inner calm, join me as we explore the art of presence and peace. Today's featured book is Master Your Dopamine, How to Rewire Your Brain for Focus and Peak Performance by Nick Trenton. Today's episode deals with dopamine and decision-making. Dopamine influences how people choose between immediate rewards versus things that might occur in the future. In other words, it forces individuals to focus on the here and now rather than how their spur-of-the-moment decisions may influence them in the future. This can lead them toward making unhealthy choices. However, if they understand how dopamine influences their ability to make judgments, they may be more conscious of its effects and try to combat them. You can teach your brain to make wiser choices that will benefit you in the long run. And in this episode, we're going to present 3 steps to help you make good, conscious decisions. Thanks for joining us today. Dopamine is also directly linked to people's sense of motivation. It can help them focus more deeply and decrease their threshold for taking action towards specific goals. To put it simply, when the dopamine levels are high, people prefer to focus their attention on exterior goals, the things they want, and feel driven to seek them. Dopamine is about wanting, not having, states Dr. Anna Lembke, a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Stanford University. When dopamine levels are low, people become unmotivated, experience less pleasure from activities, and become physically weary. One of the most significant questions in neuroscience surrounds how decisions are made and behavior is controlled. Dopamine is essential in all of this. Researchers from the Technical University of Munich and the Max Planck Institute of Neurobiology investigated the role that dopamine plays in decision-making and motor control. Certain scents and flavors are innately appealing to animals. Alluring aromas are associated with things like delicious food. Less appealing scents, such as rotten food, immediately send the animal a signal that indicates there could be trouble here. All animals have similar taste preferences when it comes to food. Sugars and fats are pleasantly viewed, but bitter tastes are negatively rewarded. In order to be able to make such judgments, humans require signals from the brain that tells us this is good or this is terrible. The dopaminergic system in the brain, often known as the reward system, is involved in these assessments. The dopaminergic system is a complex network involving various regions of the brain. It primarily functions to regulate motivation, movement, and reward-related behavior. It receives dopaminergic signals from neurons in the ventral tegmental area, VTA, and projects them to various pathways in the brainstem and forebrain that influence a range of cognitive processes. It's also known to have direct impacts on areas such as memory, decision-making, and attention. Dopaminergic neurons use varied activity patterns to deliver a signal to the brain about what the body requires and senses. Researchers were able to demonstrate that the functioning of a network of dopaminergic neurons mirrors both the organism's natural preferences for taste and smell, as well as its physiological status. Dopaminergic neurons store information about whether or not an organism is moving in addition to sensory cues like smell or taste. Neurons can react to both internal behavioral states and external impulses, combining them to enable cognitive and motor functions. By doing that, the neurons can react flexibly and individually to the most important information, such as smell, taste, but also hunger or one's own movement. This is important to reach a balanced decision because an external sensory signal can sometimes mean something good or bad, depending on an organism's condition, explains Professor Grunwald Kadow. So, what does this mean for decision making? According to research, dopamine influences how people choose between immediate rewards versus things that might occur in the future. In other words, it forces individuals to focus on the here and now rather than how their spur-of-the-moment decisions may influence them in the future. This can lead them toward making unhealthy choices. Consider this. This dopaminergic system releases dopamine into the brain when people experience something pleasurable. When individuals are presented with choices, that pleasure or reward can be used to determine which choice will be made. The body generally responds favorably to situations and options that result in the most dopamine being released into the brain. Thus, making decisions becomes a process of choosing which option will give us the most rewarding experience or feeling. Since dopamine acts as a natural motivator, it helps motivate people to make decisions that may otherwise be difficult or produce an unfavorable outcome. For example, someone who gets a dopamine rush from emotional eating might be motivated to reach for junk food whenever the stress hits. They'll make this decision instantly, without regard for future consequences. However, if they understand how dopamine influences their ability to make judgments, they can be more conscious of its effects and try to combat them. People can teach their brains to make wiser choices that will benefit them in the long run. Following are some steps to help people make good, conscious decisions. 1. Visualize the future self, the successful self. Imagery is a powerful technique for mental performance improvement. The technique is established on the assumption that through visualization and repetition, an individual can create a mental representation of their actions alongside the physical ones in order to better adapt and respond in any given situation. Holmes and Collins found that visualizing success involves creating internal cognitive representations that mirror actual action. This helps release dopamine, improve motivation, and build confidence while encouraging improved execution when performing outside of one's imagination. As such, visualizing success can be an incredibly useful tool for any athlete or performer wishing to maximize their potential within a competitive environment. Ever wondered what Olympic athletes are thinking just before they compete? Consider this. They're in front of thousands, if not millions of people. They're apprehensive, monitoring their competition, and thinking about everything that could go wrong and how to avoid it. Doesn't that sound reasonable? After all, that's what any person would do in their situation. Well-trained athletes, on the other hand, understand that they should never visualize mistakes, especially shortly before a competition. Why? Because anticipating mistakes or poor performance increases the likelihood that the athletes will do those things during the event, even if they don't intend to. Instead, many top athletes are taught to visualize their goals immediately prior to a competition. They see themselves winning the game, winning the race, or scoring the game-winning point. They're taught to imagine what they want to happen rather than what they don't want to occur. If they accomplish this, their chances of success skyrocket. Seeing themselves succeed helps people believe that they can. Similarly, visualizing the ideal success provides a creative way to set achievable goals and be empowered to make smart decisions. Whenever we utilize visualization to reach peak performance, the brain produces dopamine, and that actually motivates us to be better. We should start by writing down what success means to us. This is important because the definition of success differs widely across individuals. For example, this could include financial independence, good health, supportive relationships, or anything else that motivates us. Then, find a relaxed position, close your eyes, and let your mind explore a daydream of what it is like to be that future version of yourself. Immerse yourself in the visualization exercise until you can really feel and experience what it is like to have achieved your desired success. Keep track of any inspirational moments in a journal or on paper so that they can last forever. Creative visualization is an important practice as it helps us determine which decision-making strategies will put us on track for achieving our goals and dreams. Consider Alice's story. Alice was never one for daydreaming, but when she closes her eyes and tries to visualize the future self she wants to become, suddenly her imagination comes alive. She sees a version of herself that has achieved all of her wildest dreams and ambitions. She started a successful business, traveled the world, and made meaningful connections with people everywhere. Alice feels so inspired by this vision of herself that it fills her with energy and determination to pursue these goals more fiercely than ever before. So, every morning, she takes some time out of her busy schedule to meditate on the visualization until it feels like reality in her mind. She begins to make diligent notes, create a mind map, fill her journal with things that ignite her inspiration, and decorate her little room with sticky notes. Little by little, Alice begins making small changes that help lead her closer toward achieving what seemed impossible before. She takes online classes relating to starting a business, makes new friends who share similar interests, saves money for travel, all actions that put into motion an unstoppable force toward progress. So many people with so much wasted potential never see their dreams realized. They don't even believe in themselves to start with. This is why it's so important to visualize. It helps keep everything important in perspective. Visualizing the future self is a great way to stay motivated and take action toward achieving long-term goals. It can be a mental image or even a description of how someone wants their life to look, down to the last detail. For example, they might imagine themselves 5 years in the future, living in a beautiful house of their own, working with their dream team at the office, and enjoying an amazing view while having dinner with friends. Visualizing these things can create a subtle sense of hope and focus on what they want out of life. By getting small, tangible goals and putting markers along their path that signify progress and accomplishment, it's easier to stay on track, even when times get tough. So, chase those big dreams for the future self. Don't wait. Take some time today to start picturing what it will be like. And remember, when someone visualizes something, their brain interprets it as if it is truly occurring, which raises dopamine levels, thus boosting internal drive and motivation. 2. Personal perspective is key. The opinions of others are insignificant. It's amazing how much of a difference a unique look on life can make to one's own mental state. Personal perspective is an important factor in helping people achieve greater levels of satisfaction. It might not seem like it, but modifying the lens with what we view a challenging situation can actually increase the production of dopamine in the brain. This is because the amount of dopamine released changes depending on how the action is perceived by the individual. For example, someone who appreciates exercise will experience a 2 times rise in dopamine, whilst someone who does not will not experience any. This implies that people have some control over how much dopamine their brain produces during an activity. Their personal perspective and interpretation thus color their experience. When people believe they are enjoying a challenge, they generate more dopamine, which stimulates and motivates them to do it again in the future. Considering this, it's no wonder that changing the mindset often brings about improvements in well-being, providing people with a new lease on positive energy that, ultimately, helps them make positive decisions. While it is helpful to have an understanding of others' perspectives, relying solely upon other people's opinions to make decisions can become counterproductive. Taking into account the potential for varied advice and disagreements, ask those around what they think might cause further confusion. This confusion will lead to lower levels of self-confidence and self-worth, thus lowering the overall levels of dopamine as well. Lower levels of dopamine will lead to lower levels of motivation, and this will have an overtly negative impact on decision-making. Therefore, before making an important decision, it's key to consider all the questions we need to ask ourselves in order to gain clarity and make an informed choice. It's important that we take the time for self-reflection so that we understand our own wants, needs, desires, and intentions. Having a clear understanding of what we want out of life will ensure that the decisions we make will better satisfy these goals. Professor David Welch explains that people who don't take the time for self-reflection tend to make bad decisions because they do not understand their own position. He encourages readers to ask themselves specific questions like, will the outcome of my decision move me closer to what I truly want? Does the benefit outweigh the cost? Is the level of risk worth the reward? How committed am I to this change? These questions help individuals assess the situation and decide if a particular course of action is constricting in alignment with their goals. To further provide an example, Welch underscores how one should be sure they really want to marry somebody before taking such a huge step. Ask yourself, do I really want to marry this person, or do I just want to get married with kids someday? Will being with this person make me irrevocably happy? We can have peace of mind in knowing our decision will bring satisfaction for years to come, consistently higher levels of dopamine, rather than regret soon after. 3. Align everything with core values, persevere, and fight on. Having a purpose in life and aligning with one's core values can be extremely fulfilling. It gives people an underlying sense of purpose that's difficult to find elsewhere. Not only does this keep people motivated and satisfied, but it also makes them happier. This is backed up by science. When people are doing something meaningful, the brain releases dopamine. So, if people want to increase their happiness and contentment levels, they should consider spending time on activities that are closely tied to their core values. Not only will this make them a more fulfilled individual, it'll also give their mind and soul a much-needed boost. Thus, aligning our lives with our core values is an important factor in achieving meaningful motivation. Before we decide on a course of action, it's important to take time to think about how it fits into our list of the highest priority values, passions, and priorities that make up who we are. If there's a significant misalignment between the decision and our fundamental values, then chances are we won't find satisfaction regardless of the outcome. If something does not satisfy us innately or clashes with our core values, it's likely not going to bring us any joy, and that essentially means that no dopamine will be released as a result of participating in said activity. Perseverance is the key to success in both sports and life. Whether it's someone who perseveres despite difficulties and setbacks, or someone who tends to quit when faced with a challenge, they can still increase their ability to persevere with practice. Scientists have identified higher dopamine levels as being linked to forming habits like perseverance. Dopamine is the fuel that helps motivate people to stay focused and work hard toward achieving their goals. Everyone's heard the famous quote from Henry Ford reminding us that work brings joy. But what does it mean when applied to perseverance? Quite simply, framing perseverance as an opportunity rather than a drudgery can actually boost neurochemistry, increasing confidence and well-being in the process. Rather than viewing the process of perseverance as a grueling, joyless experience, look at it through a different lens. When done this way, people will find that many elements of the journey become hedonic, helping them stay motivated and keeping them on track to achieve their goals. By taking this mindset and making small changes to their perspective and attitude, they just might find themselves able to persevere with greater ease and satisfaction, all the while perfectly aligned with their inner selves. Neuroscientists have found that dopamine is connected to positive reinforcement, which means that when people make progress toward completing a task, such as studying for a test, their brain will produce more dopamine, giving them an inner feeling of satisfaction and increased striving power. So, if they want to strengthen their ability to stay on track despite adversity, they need to look for regular opportunities where they can observe small successes and let those accomplishments encourage more of the same. To better understand themselves and succeed in making decisions based on their core values, create a list of what they are, and then evaluate how any prospective choice measures up against them before taking further steps toward putting it into action. Having met a few individuals with an unwavering commitment to their goals, and often in awe of the way they carry themselves despite setbacks and failures, these gritty people possess a determination that enables them to persist and work hard toward achieving their vision. This quality is simply inspiring from afar and admirable when observed from up close. So, before pursuing any dream or goal, it's important to have the inner fortitude needed to get there, something that can never be overlooked in anyone striving for success. Grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Grit is stamina. Grit is sticking with your future, day in, day out, not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years, and working really hard to make that future a reality. Grit is living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. Angela Lee Duckworth. Gusto, like grit, is an important characteristic of successful people. We must be passionate about the decisions we make in life. Passion has strength. So, when it comes to making the proper choice, we shouldn't fall back into our comfort zone and continue to work in a job we despise. Instead, find strategies to energize your soul and make huge strides toward your goal. Setting and meeting deadlines is the key to successfully powering your dopamine production. We need to get into the habit of setting a timeline for ourselves, be it an hour or a week. An effective way to do this is to set up daily scheduling and goals, both big and small, that must be completed by our own individual deadlines. Additionally, use outside resources like timers, calendars, or even, dare we say, peer pressure. Enlist a partner with similar goals who can help with accountability and stick it out. At first, it may seem scary, but once we develop the habit of monitoring ourselves against a timeline, it will get easier day by day. And soon enough, we'll find ourselves becoming an efficient worker bee with a smooth dopamine flow, too.
And
that brings us to the conclusion of today's episode. Before we sign off, let's take a moment and review two of the main takeaways from this episode. When we do something entertaining, such as watch a comedy, our brains produce dopamine, which makes us feel good. The brain then recalls how pleasant this experience was and seeks it out again in the future. Thus, dopamine is responsible for motivating us to repeat rewarding actions or activities. When making a major decision, feel free to employ both hemispheres of the brain instead of just the logical left side. It's critical to strike a balance between emotion and logic. A great example is listening to relaxing music in order to stimulate both sides of the brain whilst faced with a problem or writing something. And there you have it, folks. We've looked at some insights into how our brains respond to entertainment and make decisions. Remember, dopamine is like a powerful motivator, urging us to seek out rewarding experiences. So the next time you're in need of a boost, surround yourself with things that bring joy and stimulate those feel-good chemicals. And let's not forget the importance of embracing both sides of our brain when it comes to decision-making. Finding that perfect balance between emotion and logic can lead to some truly inspired choices. As Albert Einstein once said, the intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift.